Hello and welcome. You are watching Indus Special. I'm Jawad Tehami. Millions of Indians are protesting in India against the policies of the nationalist BJP government, owing to protests against many divisive and inhumane policies of Narendra Modi's government. India presents a chaotic picture. The passing of Anti-Muslim Citizenship Amendment Act and privatization of public firms and natural resources, demand in minimum wage and pension rise, and weakening economy has stirred huge resentment in India. Farmers, students, laborers, civil society, and even the opposition is lamenting about the BJP's agenda, policies, and practices. Demonstrations have not only choked rail and road, but also affected universities owing to high-handedness of Indian authorities. West Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, Maharashtra, Kerala, Karnataka, and Assam have witnessed tensions owing to clashes between the protesters and police. More than 25 people have been killed in protests, and hundreds of them have been injured. Not only this, Mumbai police launched an investigation against a woman for holding a Free Kashmir placard. As we speak, the continuous curfew and the communications blackout in the Indian-occupied Kashmir has crossed 155 days now. In fact, it's 158th day today. As a European Parliament envoy's delegation has refused to visit Indian-held Kashmir on an India-guided tour and has demanded an independent tour. To talk more about this particular thing, anti-people policies of India's BJP government, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, we are joined by Mr. Ravi Srivastav, an analyst joining us from Mumbai, and Lieutenant General Ghulam Mustafa, analyst joining us from Lahore. Both of you gentlemen, thank you very much for your time at Indus. I'll start the discussion with you, Mr. Ravi. Where is India going? If we take a look, India almost in every nook and corner, as I have already mentioned, almost in every state, there are protests going on for one reason or the other. Where is India going under BJP's government?
Mr. Javed, the situation is extremely volatile as far as India is concerned, and it has developed and aggravated since last 1 month, rather more than 1 month, when the government passed the Citizenship Amendment Act, followed by there were announcements with regard to National Population Register and some talks about the National NRC, that citizenship survey. Now, these things have culminated into a mass-scale agitations across the country. The worst part is that more than the citizenry, the students are upset, and the students have come on road. Practically every university has demonstrated. There have been violent agitations, protests across the country. But in the states which are ruled by BJP, this has taken a violent turn, and people have been killed also. In Uttar Pradesh, some 20 people died. In Assam, 5 people died. And in Karnataka, Bangalore, 2 people lost their lives. So this situation is extremely volatile at the moment. And you must have heard, just 4 days before, there is a Jawaharlal University in New Delhi. This university, in fact, is not a university alone. It's a thought. It's an ideology in itself in the country. And there, it happened that the goons sponsored by Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad, which is an offshoot student wing of Bharatiya Janata Party, which is ruling the country, and their rulers called RSS, the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh. These people entered the campus. They were masked with lathis, with the sticks, with the hammers and all, and they beat the students blue. And
Mr. Ravi,
as a result,
would you hold that thought over there? A point which you mentioned during your discourse, you just mentioned to the fact that those states in which the BJP government has the lead or has the government, in those states, the protests have turned violent. So it is quite a paradox because we saw in the election, BJP had the landslide victory. Of course, they had the mandate from the people. Now it is turning against them. It's sort of a paradox. How do you see that?
Yeah, Javed, you are almost right. The fact is that during that month of May, the government won the election with a thumping majority, almost 303 out of 543 in the Parliament of India. But the fact is that election, after that election, the government went ahead firing on all cylinders and they passed various laws. One was the triple talaq, then they did Article 370 abrogation, which is having a lockdown in the valley of Kashmir for last 155 days. And subsequently, they passed this CAA and NRC bill. All these things, in between, they passed the bill for constructing a temple at Ayodhya in UP, Uttar Pradesh. You have rightly said. But after that, the BJP has lost 2 more states. And as a result, the footprint of Bharatiya Janata Party has reduced now to only 35% states in the whole India.
Okay, Mr. Ravi, you are of the view that those states in which BJP had a mandate, they are not slowly, actually, they're very fastly losing those states as well. And already you have mentioned they have already lost elections in 2 of those states. I'll take the discussion to Lieutenant General Ghulam Mustafa. Sir, how do you think where India is going with all the protests on different and various issues going on in almost every nook and corner? Where do you see the so-called the largest democracy in the world heading?
Actually feel bad about it, but way back in 2014 when Mr. Modi came to power for the first time, I wrote an article and that was titled Modi versus India. It is almost turning out to be true. One feels actually sad, not because of what is happening to Modi or BJP, but because what is likely to happen to region. I think India is going south, and going south at a very, very fast pace. And this has the pace has increased over the last 2.5, 3 months as BJP, drunk with the vote power that they think they got, not realizing that Modi Sahab by himself is actually a nobody. He has been sponsored into this position twice over the years. And there is a reason behind it. And the reason generally is and that is what I think is the conflict right now. And because of that, you find that all segments of society which are not part of that kind of a mindset, they are against this, whatever Mr. Modi is doing. Now, there are 2 mindsets working. One is that idea India, which is based on secularism. Because if you go back in the history, it's an irony again. Because when the 2 countries came into power, they came to being, Congress held its first CEC and they minted that Pakistan is an unnatural state, it will wither away, and if not, it will be done away with. Now, actually, whatever they had thought, if you remove Pakistan, you write India, that is where India is heading towards. Because the kind of division which you find and the kind of, the confrontation between the 2 and the acrimony between the 2 thought processes, that is widening the gap between whatever is holding India together. And I have read in an article that those who are thoughtful and people who understand these matters more, and they think that idea India has been practically killed. When idea India has been killed, then India by itself, it was never a country like that. Then there is no reason for India to be what India is today. So therefore, that is what people fear. And if that were to happen, it will destabilize whole of Asia. And that will be a huge setback for the people, some very good people in India, majority of whom they just want to live in peace. They want to be left alone to do what they think is right for them. And that was the strength that India had, and that is now turning out to be weakness. One more thing which is going unnoticed, and what we were not talking about, is that this new command structure that Mr. Modi has put in place of its armed forces, the higher echelon at that level. The Chief of Defense Staff, by itself, fine. Every country has the right to organize its armed forces the way it sees fit. Now, this post being created at this point in time, and Bipin Rawat, who initially was number 4 on the list, picked up, made the Chief Army Staff, and now this post has been filled in by this gentleman who is now a 4-star general. That actually has put the armed forces as part of Mr. Modi's political agenda.
Exactly, Lieutenant General Ghulam Mustafa, please hold your thought over there. We are now joined by Mr. Rajesh, Sundaram, a journalist joining us from Mumbai. Thank you very much for your time at Indus. So we are discussing what exactly is happening in India. Protests are going on all over the country, and dozens of people have been killed during these protests. The rails and the road network both are choked, and the universities have been affected by these protests as well. You are over there on the ground. What is the situation? What is the sentiment across protesters who are demanding their rights from the BJP government?
Clearly, there is a regime which is trying to push down the throat of the population, certain policies which go against the secular fabric of the country, that go against the aspirations of a young generation, and they are pushing back, and that's what we are seeing right now across campuses in the country. There is a lot of resistance that's coming from the security forces, from the government, from organizations like the ABVP and the RSS, who are coming out and wanting to push that side. So yes, what we are seeing right now is resistance, mostly from the students, but clearly civil society as well wants a say in what is happening, the way these pieces of legislation are being pushed in without debate, without involving the opposition. Also the fact that the space that the opposition should have carried in a democracy, they've yielded that. And I think what is happening right now is a part of a process in India where the people of India want...
So, Sundaram, Sanjay Jha, spokesperson of main opposition Congress party, told to one of the TV channels during his interview about specifically the citizenship amendment law. So he pointed out that this is part of a deeper divisive BJP's political strategy to polarize India. And that is what exactly BJP continuously seems to be doing after having got a bigger majority in the recently held elections. So where do you see India heading after this strategy by the BJP government? How do you think it is affecting the social fabric of the society overall?
Well, I think, we have a government which has got a brute majority, but our constitution still is a democracy. We are not a theocracy. We are not a majoritarian state. So clearly, I think what the people want is for the principles of democracy to be maintained. But I think what we are seeing from the government and those parties in power, they would want to push down their agenda, the ideological agenda, which is seeing a large degree of resistance right now. So I think, these are the dynamics in society which are playing out. There's a government that wants to push a particular ideological agenda onto the government, make it seem like a majoritarian state, a state which is a theocracy rather than a democracy. And there is resistance on the ground. What happens in a democracy, of course, would be the people would choose what destiny they want. If you look at the past elections that have happened in various states, clearly there has been a rejection of this divisive agenda. Will it be the same when we go into the next elections? Well, many would say that some of this resistance is going to reflect in those elections. But which way will this take? Where would this lead India to? I wouldn't want to venture and look into a crystal ball right now. But what I can definitely say is that there is change that's happening right now people,
There
especially
is a
students,
change.
are
You think
out
there is a
on
change which
streets.
is happening now in India due to the BJP's policies and practices over there in the country? Mr. Ravi Srivastav, Mr. Sundaram just pointed out that there is a change. Finally, can we consider that there is a realization at a larger level among the public after they gave huge mandate to the BJP in the recently held elections? But in 2014, they also formed the government. But before the election, the recently held elections, they, in their manifesto, had a couple of things which actually pointed out, for example, the revocation of Article 370, snatching the Kashmiris of their special status and autonomy. And then when we talk about the Citizenship Amendment Bill and then national registration, depriving millions of people in Assam from their citizenship rights. So that was very much part of the manifesto of BJP before coming into power. So don't you think people would have realized that these things, when would be materialized, would have a big impact on the social fabric and the ideology of the secular India?
In fact, BJP's divisive agenda was visible right from the day one when they took the power in 2014. But the fact is that you understand very well that India is a majority Hindu population in the whole country, and BJP could sell their agenda to those people and polarize the votes right from the day one. And that culminated into another landslide victory in May 2019. But the fact is, Jawad, you have to realize that such agendas do not work in the long term because India is slipping badly in the economy. Their GDP has come down to 4.5 in the second quarter, and third quarter is also going to be miserable. There are no jobs in the country. The exports are declining, the prices are going up, the inflation is high, the industries are sinking, the industries are stopping manufacturing, the automobile sale has in 20 years, worse in the country. So with all these culminating, there are no jobs ultimately. And the youngsters whom the government could blackmail on the religious polarization are realizing the fact that this government is not doing anything on the ground. And this is all a rhetoric that, we have abrogated the Article 370, we are going to make a temple, but temple is not going to give you the bread and butter. That's a reality which is now sinking in. And as a result, the youth of the country is very, very agitated, which is culminating into these kind of agitations which have already spread across the length and breadth of the country. And the students, and you would see majority, the girls are coming forward on these agitations. And that situation is very, very dangerous. And I don't think that BJP will be able to sustain this kind of political climate in the country for long. But another unfortunate part is government is not entering into any kind of a dialogue with the stakeholders.
That's quite authoritarian. That's quite authoritarian. Mr. Srivastav, I'll come back to you. General Mustafa, as Mr. Srivastav has pointed out, that the economy of India is slowing down, there is rising unemployment, and there's so many other issues which are happening right now in India. Do you see India imploding from as Mr. Srivastav has just pointed out, that BJP won't be able to handle such massive protests if they linger on?
Frankly, I personally feel that India is on the brink of imploding from within. And the kind of ideology that Mr. Modi is trying to impose, and the way he has cornered himself, he's got his armed forces alongside with him. He's got the ruling Brahman mindset alongside with him. That is what is very, very dangerous. It's dangerous for India. It's dangerous for this region. And in this kind of a madness, Mr. Modi has no other option either to talk to the people. And if he does that, then BJP is a history. Because that is what is sustaining BJP, the hatred. Actually, that is what people of India must realize, that he is actually spewing hatred against everything and everybody. Within the Hindu community, if you find more than 60% of Hindu community itself is against what Mr. Modi stands for. And ironically, when Pakistan gets to be blamed for everything extremism, the religious extremism, and in Pakistan we have never allowed any religious party to be in power, in this kind of a power. They may win few out seats on the brink, but otherwise you never see them in power. They can't ever imagine coming to power in Pakistan. But on the other side, a democracy which has been flourishing. I mean, in Pakistan, people used to always tell us that Indian democracy is taking India to places. But a democratic India allows this kind of a hatred to rule them. I mean, that is what is very, very dangerous. The society within is divided, and the divisions are putting the various segments of society far apart. Muslims is one community which is over, 20 crore people, 22, 25 crore people. But this kind of people stand up and they start looking for, claiming their own rights. And they're joined by the less privileged Hindu community and the Christians and the Jains and the Buddhists and the Sikhs. Where do you think India will go? I think India needs to stand up against that India which Mr. Modi is trying to present to the world. Otherwise, not only that they are in trouble themselves, they're going to put the rest of the region in trouble. Mr. Modi, like the madness he resorted to last year in February, and this is kind of a thing that he could do again. And this time it might be far more serious, leading to a war which nobody will win. And if that doesn't happen, he is trying to become a pawn in the hands of the so-called international establishment, which is trying to block Chinese rise, and which is trying to block what is happening between China and Russia. This is not on. Frankly, I'm very, very disturbed on the very thought of what is happening to India, not because of what is happening to India per se, but because of the impact that could have on Pakistan and the region. I'm very seriously afraid because this kind of a madness that Mr. Modi has got hold of could lead to circumstances and consequences of which nobody knows. And like I said, we could get into a war which nobody will win. We can't afford doing that.
Lieutenant Ghulam Mustafa, thank you very much for your thoughts on this. And you are really concerned about whatever is happening in India. And that is not only affecting the Indians within that country, but also impacting the region as well. Thank you very much for your time at Indus. Mr. Rajesh Sundaram, as Mr. Rajiv a couple of moments before pointed out that this resentment is across the board in India. Even females and the girls are coming out. And we have just seen that Mumbai police has launched an investigation against a woman who held a Free Kashmir placard. What exactly is happening in Kashmir? It's a 158 day of continuous curfew and the clampdown. And when somebody talks about the rights of the Kashmiris within India, they're also held accountable. How do you see what kind of an attitude this one is on the part of Indian authorities?
Well, as far as the clampdown, the denial of basic rights in the internet, the kind of suspension of rights that ordinary Indians enjoy elsewhere, I think that is something that no person with in their right minds would support under any circumstance. Having said that, the lady in question who was protesting in Bombay, she has been subject to a question, and the security agencies indeed have said that they would take action. But I think there is a lot of political support. Many have actually come out and said that when she talks about free Kashmir, it's about giving freedom to the people of Kashmir, to give them the rights that other Indians across India enjoy, the right to use internet when they want, to move around what they want, express themselves as they want. I think that's something that's also coming out. But, freedom of expression is guaranteed in the Indian Constitution. Nobody can deny that. That's something that will be resisted, that is being resisted across the country. There is police action that's happening. There are students who are being beaten up. But are they stepping back? They are not. There is a mood of resistance on the campuses. There are various groups that are coming out. There is repression of some sorts that's happening. Yes, in Kashmir, in other parts of the country as well. But this is part of a churning that's happening, and what comes out of it is something we'll have to see. And I think when there is a large mass of people who are coming out, when there's so many young people with aspirations who are coming out, there'll have to be something good that comes out of it. But to answer your question on Kashmir, I think if you ask anybody in the civil society here, they would definitely condemn anything that goes against the spirit of the Indian Constitution.
Whatever is happening, the Indian authorities in Indian-occupied Kashmir, 158 days of continuous curfew and the lockdown, and that is, if by the spirit of what civil society thinks, it is in violation of that. Mr. Rajesh Sundaram, thank you very much for your time at Indus, journalist joining us from Mumbai. Mr. Srivastav, how do you think that basically when this all is happening in India, and as you already mentioned, that females are also coming, and on one side we see that a female who was asking for the rights of the Kashmiris, she was investigated by the Mumbai police, and on the other side we see the celebrities also coming in favor of the protesters in India. So how do you see where actually what do you predict actually what is going to happen within the next couple of years in India?
First of all, I will tell with confidence that BJP is on a slipping ground, and the way they are trying to divide the country vertically on the caste lines, community line, and social lines, it is going to be detrimental for the nation. Because you rightly said, the Bollywood today is vertically divided. There are many people who are on the side of the government, and there are many more people who are opposing the government. The celebrities like Deepika Padukone stood by the JNU President I.C. Ghosh. Yesterday, you must have seen you must be having the pictures for that. There are other celebrities, Swara Bhaskar, Anurag Kashyap, most of them, they have opposed the government action in JNU and other universities, and the way government is trying to crush this particular movement.
Even the celebrities are also protesting against the policies of the BJP-led government, and the incumbent government is, of course, leaving no stone unturned in order to crush all these voices which are coming against it. Obviously, the situation in India is dire, and the protests are happening all across the country. Mr. Ravi Srivastav, thank you very much for joining at Indus, Analyst joining from Mumbai. And it's a time for a short break at Indus Special, and after we return from the break, we'll be discussing the Libya crisis and the Russia-Turkey call for the ceasefire over there. Stay tuned with us. Welcome back. As the Libyan National Army, led by Khalifa Haftar, has captured a coastal city of Sirte and is not far away from the capital in Tripoli, Turkey and Russia have jointly called for a ceasefire over there in Libya. Turkey started deploying the troops in Libya after its parliament approved a bill of the deployment of the troops in Libya to back the UN-recognized government over there of the National Accord led by Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj. While Khalifa Haftar's forces have allegedly the Russian support. A country already divided among various political factors vying for the political control over the territory after specifically the fall of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. It became a battleground for not only the regional actors, but also the international actors. And on the other hand, the United Nations has expressed concern about the involvement of foreign actors in Libya, saying that arming the warring parties will not help anybody, but only will deepen the ongoing conflict. US President Donald Trump also warned Turkey against the deployment of its troops in Libya. On the other hand, if we see that Greece, Cyprus and Egypt have held a meeting, European Union has also criticized the actions of Turkey. And specifically talking about a German Foreign Minister, Mr. Heiko Maas, he has warned of a Syria-style situation emerging in Libya as well. To understand the scale of the Libyan crisis, the growing Turkish role and its interest there, and future of peace in the war-torn country, we are joined today by Mr. Serkan, Birgel, the analyst, joining us from London, and Dr. Leonid Petrov, IR expert from Sydney. Both of you, gentlemen, thank you for your time at Indus News. I'll start the discussion with Mr. Birgel. As the Libyan National Army is heading towards Tripoli, as it has already captured Sirte, the coastal city, which is around the crescent, the oil crescent that we call. So do you think that this joint call by Turkey and Russia would help establish ceasefire, which they say should be established by Sunday midnight, 12th of January?
I should certainly hope so, because if Khalifa Haftar decides to go against the ceasefire announcement by Russia and Turkey, it would very sort of clearly demonstrate what kind of an actor he is in the region, which may mean that he loses further international support, because he has been the one who has been consistently breaking any kind of diplomatic process in the region. He has been consistently calling 0 hour on Tripoli since April last year. So he has been on the offensive. So it's really sort of the ball in his court now to decide which way he wants to turn. But I think that it's a good move by Turkey and Russia, because it not only displays their sort of involvement to a certain degree, but it also demonstrates their intention, which is not really to have a full-blown out conflict in the region.
So do you think, when we talk about the Libyan crisis, we see two different major political actors. One, the government of national accord that is supported by the UN and also recognized by the UN. On the other hand, we see Khalifa Haftar heading towards Tripoli, and he has straight away threatened Turkey to take it head on if Turkey comes into a sort of a battle with Khalifa Haftar forces. But Turkey previously has alleged Russia of backing Khalifa Haftar's forces. Do you think Russia would be able to influence Haftar this time around to stop his proceeding towards Tripoli?
Perhaps, but also Khalifa Haftar is himself backed by a number of other actors, so it depends on what sort of relationship that Russia has directly with, say, for example, or General Sisi in Egypt. I think that as an extension of Russia, perhaps we could say the Wagner mercenaries and other mercenaries in the region could be sort of inhibited in some way or form by Russia for perhaps some concessions elsewhere from Turkey. But I don't think that on the first point that you mentioned about Haftar waging war against Turkey, I don't think that's really in his best interest. Turkey doesn't have a major scale deployment in the region. I don't think it will either. And it's really a way for him to kind of change the narrative in the region. He's saying, we're under an invasion of Turkey and so on and so forth. It's really kind of a methodology for him to rile his base against the Tripoli UN-backed government. But hopefully, I think that Russia and Turkey can bring some sort of semblance. And the recent flurry of diplomacy that we have seen from the EU, which has finally woken up to the region, can start to take place.
Mr. Birgel, I'll come to that point, the diplomacy which is going on by the European countries as well. Dr. Petrov, how do you think, would this ceasefire, which has been called jointly by Russia and Turkey after Turkey deployed its troops in Libya, do you think it can be materialized as per the pledge which has been made by these two countries?
Well, we see that the proxy war is happening in Libya, and it replicates what already has been going on in Syria. So just simply looking at the example of Russian and Turkish cooperation in Syria, potentially there could be cooperation in Libya as well. So I think that relationship between Moscow and Ankara hasn't been easy all the time, but diplomacy prevailed even after the shooting of Russian airplane and also the assassination of the Russian ambassador. Now, in Turkey, still President Putin and President Erdogan talk about cooperation, economic cooperation and military cooperation, and not only in Syria but in Libya as well. And although Russian troops are not officially in Libya, but we believe that there are almost 2,500 Russian mercenaries are present in that country, along with Sudanese and Chadian mercenaries. So it's a classic proxy war. It's a very messy situation, but if powers like Russia and Turkey cooperate in Libya, I think there's a higher chance of stabilization of the situation and the ending, or at least a ceasefire of this civil conflict.
So, Dr. Petrov, what do you think prompted Turkey to take such drastic measures, approving the bill through the parliament and deploying the troops over there in Libya so very fast, when already it was supporting the government of national accord in Tripoli?
Well, Turkey is supporting the government, which is recognized by the United Nations organization, and many Western countries also support it. So Turkey is trying to mend its relationship with the West by supporting Prime Minister al-Siraj. I'm not sure about the Turkish troops, but the weapons, military armed vehicles, and logistics are definitely going to Tripoli to support the regime there. The problem is that the regime is in conflict with General Haftar's troops, which are supported by Turkey's enemies all around the region, including Russia. So I think it looks like President Erdogan is trying to establish influence over the Mediterranean, just out of its Turkish geostrategic intention to control the gas exploitation and just the Blue Stream and the Turkish Stream pipes, which have been opened pompously by President Erdogan and President Putin, should not end in the Balkans, but go further into Europe. And Libya is an important hub for oil, so I think that delineation of the Mediterranean between Libya, Libyan area of influence, and Turkic area of influence is very important. And Turkey is simply looking at Libya as a hinterland.
Dr. Petrov, you pointed out two different things in your discourse. One is that Turkey is trying to increase its influence, as there is oil as well, and the Mediterranean sea route. So Turkey is trying to take hold of those things as well. But on the other, it is being criticized by the European powers as well as the United Nations. Even the United States President has warned him against deploying the troops in Libya. However, he is supporting the very side which has been supported and recognized by the United Nations and the European Union. So don't you think this situation is ironic?
Well, yes, it looks like President Erdogan is embattled with its own discourse. He tries to be part of the Muslim world, but at the same time it's in clear conflict with its immediate neighbors. And even Israel is now creating trouble for the gas market, creating its own pipeline going.
Dr. Leonid, thank you very much for your time at Indus. So you're aware of the view that Turkey has two things: increasing its influence over there in the Mediterranean and in Libya. And Mr. Birgel, what do you think, what prompted Turkey so fast? Already it was supporting the government of national accord, which is a UN-recognized government. What prompted Turkey to take such fast actions, getting the bill approved by the parliament and sending the troops into Libya?
I think what riled Turkey into action was simply the sort of magnitude of support that Haftar has received from the countries that Turkey has fallen out with, primarily which we also believe has had a hand in financing the coup in 2016. General Sisi, of course, and the Muslim Brotherhood situation in Egypt is also unfortunate. But I think that Turkey wanted to stop the rot. It wanted to stop the rot for these countries to be in control of the political situation in yet another country. And it's really kind of anti-democratic coalition, if you think about it. So I do think Turkey is on the right side against the theocracies and the military regimes of these certain countries. Turkey also has an interest in maritime boundary delimitation in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. So, for example, countries such as Greece and the Greek Cypriots of the Greek Cypriot administration of Southern Cyprus, the Republic of Cyprus, are trying to box Turkey in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea with bilateral maritime agreements. And Turkey is trying to break that because it's trying to say that, these bilateral agreements are infringing on my claims in the region. We need trilateral and quadrilateral agreements, not only bilateral agreements in the region. And the LNA with Haftar is kind of on the same page as the Greeks and the Greek Cypriots. So it's in Turkey's interests for the GNA to have a say, because the GNA is more favourable to Turkey. I mean, there's such a level of political subjectivism here. International law is kind of being appropriated for their own kind of maximalist interests in this region. So I think Turkey had to act, really, to save the Tripoli-based government.
So, Mr. Birgel, the United Nations has said that arming the warring parties within Libya will only worsen the situation. UN envoy Ghassan Salameh has said that he's angry over foreign intervention in the country. And that is what German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas has also alluded to when he says that it might be a Syria-style situation in Libya as well. Security Council has also raised the alarm over the rising escalation in the country. How do you think the UN can influence the parties to come to the terms with each other regarding this whole scenario?
It's hard to say, because the UN process has been quite toothless. I think that all the actors, all the parties to the dispute have been consistently violating the kind of arms embargo that the UN has tried to stipulate for the region. So it's quite hard. The UN as an institution, I think, worldwide has become a bit sort of less effective, in my opinion, and we're seeing sort of the rise of, say, national actors in replacement of the UN. It's from the EU perspective as well. It's quite how should I say this, from the Turkish perspective? So it's quite annoying to hear that Turkey's escalating the situation, or will escalate the situation, because chronology matters, and Haftar's the one who's been on the offensive. And there's an assumption that if Turkey did not intervene in the way that it has done, it would have been sort of sunshine and rainbows, or sort of there would have been peace in Libya. But it's clearly not the case, and we can't live the counterfactual.
Mr. Serkan, analyst, joining us from London. Thank you very much for your time. Of course, the situation over in Libya is also very dire, and the people are being affected on a larger scale because of the proxy wars which are going on, and especially the battle between the Khalifa Haftar's forces, which is trying to take over Tripoli, and they have already captured a coastal city of Sarad, which is a strategic city. And the time will actually reveal what exactly happens. But UN envoy Mr. Ghassan Salameh said that he was really angry to see that everybody wants to talk about Libya, but nobody is talking about Libyans. So it's all about people. If people are being affected, United Nations or the European Union or any actor in the region should take measures in order to redress those miseries and the difficulties which people are facing. Thank you very much for joining at Indus Special. With this, we come to end of the show. Thank you for being with us.